button right now. And we will send you guys the recording and also the slide deck that Tony's going to use in our follow-up email. So just a little bit about ESA before we get started. For the past 6 years, we have partnered with ADP to build this executive community of approximately 2,000 participants now in 20 cities, delivering world-class thought leadership and the exposure to innovative technologies that are shaping the future of work. We also are unique in that we bring, and we were just talking about this before you guys came in, we bring HROs, CIOs, and other work tech executives together because we believe that they all must be in lockstep with each other to deliver the kind of worker experience necessary to attract and retain talent, especially now. And in addition to thought leadership, we also offer our participants the opportunity to be a work tech startup advisor, where you're exposed to next generation startup technologies and to potential startup advisory board positions. And finally, we offer a unique board positioning membership that provides all in one place the resources an executive needs to ultimately secure their perfect board seat. And if anybody's interested in pursuing a board position, check it out on our website, executivestrategicalliance.com. So we've partnered with the Hackett Group about as long as we've partnered with ADP, and they have always provided some great thought leadership for our network. Today, Tony, he's going to share insights from one of their recent surveys on the new talent agenda. And joining Tony today is a team of the CHRO and the CIO of the BERKS Group. So just a little bit more about Tony, Laura, and Matt. Tony's the Senior Research Director for the Hackett Group and has over 25 years experience in the areas of HR, IT, and business strategy. Laura Clark is the EVP for BERKS Group and CPO for NPG. And she joined BERKS from Frank and McGitt, I hope I've got that right, Associates, which is an international research and consulting firm where she focused on media strategy, brand building, and the impact of millennials on all aspects of the business growth. Matt Hoskins is the CIO of the BERKS Group with 25 years of technology and management experience, and his tenure has given him a wide view on how technology can empower people to do more and make better decisions. I'm really excited for this session, you guys, because we fundamentally believe that the CHRO and CIO have got to work together to provide what's necessary for the talent agenda. And I think you're going to see that as we go through the presentation. And Tony, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Cindy. It's a pleasure to be back with your group. And a delight to be joined by Laura and Matt to share their practitioner perspectives as we go through some of the research findings from a study we just conducted late last year. It's an annual study we do every year where we poll executives in HR and actually in other functions around the key issues and priorities that they're anticipating for the coming year. And so what I've done here is select it. It's a rather large study, so we're not going to beat you over the head with all kinds of data. I've selected some of we think the most important findings under these headings. So this is the agenda that we're going to go through today. And basically our format will be, I'll share some of the findings and insights and invite Laura and Matt to give some of their perspective on what they're facing, what they're doing, their key challenges around what we'll be talking about today. And I believe Cindy and David will be monitoring the chat. So as questions come up, she may be interjecting, and we'll of course be happy to comment and provide further elaboration. So as we go into 2023, I just wanted to take a little time starting with the changing business context, and there are kind of three fundamental issues that are coloring the agenda for businesses and certainly for HR none of which will be a surprise. Then I want to share the data we collected on what the plans are in anticipation of the HR budgets for the coming year, FTE counts anticipated, and technology spend. And we collect data and ask people to give us a sense of, are they expecting increases versus decreases versus no change? So we'll share that and get some of Laura and Matt's views on that. And then we'll spend a lot of time on the key priorities, the key issues, if you will, for HR in 2023. And we poll, I think the last one we did had 43 different issues for HR, and we asked the respondents to rank them. And so we'll be sharing the top 10 and talking a bit about some of those. And then we'll talk about technology. We collect quite a bit of data around tech, the strategies, adoption levels, plans for 2023, and also the degree to which HR is getting full value out of the technology. And again, it would be interesting to get, I love the concept of having CHRO with CIO, because as you'll see, technology is a common theme across a lot of different areas that we'll be talking about today. So a good working partnership is essential between HR and IT, both to benefit the company as well as those individual functions. And then we'll finish with some recommendations. So let me start with the business context. And this is kind of the three-headed monster that businesses have been facing now for, certainly all of 2022. And the anticipation is for 2023 as well. And as I say, not surprising here. And we had a list of about 15, 18 different things. And these are the top three, and the only ones that a majority of respondents indicated was in their top risks for the year. And again, economic downturn and a recession, I think maybe all of us are sick of hearing it every day. It's part of what we're doing. We're hearing it in the news. We're hearing it reported. We're also dealing with it. But having said that, there are some real factors there that are driving the business, and the questions about growth, if it's going to come, and where we're going to see potential recession, how that's going to affect our business, and so on. These have real ramifications for HR and IT, in terms of the headcounts and our capacity to deal with all the issues around fulfilling demand, selling, and so on, and operating as a business. So that's top of mind across the C-suite and top of mind, I think, for HR. Inflation also is part and parcel to that, and that's created some unique issues for companies, certainly in the HR space, in our comp and benefit area, trying to keep pace. What sorts of increases should we be giving people, given the fact that inflation is been quite higher than normal, and we're not sure to the degree to which it's going to be coming down, and so on. And of course, the impact on talent markets affecting all of that. So that keeps life very interesting around those kinds of decisions. And then that talent shortage's inability to fill critical roles. This is something that's been in the top three of risks issues for the last 4 or 5 years of the study. So it's one that has become a chronic issue for companies, and obviously HR is in the middle of this in terms of trying to craft solutions around, if we have open, well, first of all, making sure we don't have openings around critical roles. So retention is a huge issue, and things we're doing to make sure we're retaining that talent in critical roles, but also issues around recruitment. And there are a whole raft of things there we will be getting into as we get into the key issues which relate to this. So I'm just going to pause here and invite Laura and Matt to kind of give their opening take on how their business environment, what the key kind of factors shaping their agendas for 2023, whether it's these things as well as there are others maybe that are prominent for them. So I don't know, Laura or Matt, which of you would like to chime in first?
Either way, Matt, you want to start?
Go for it, Laura. I'll let you take this.
Well, I mean, certainly these things all resonate. When you said you had a list of 43 things, I'm like, is that all? And I think to give everybody a little bit of context to the comments that Matt and I'll make today, we are in a business run by a third and fourth generation family. So some of these things we have real advantages because we're not driven by Wall Street. We've got a legacy business that is in media, 70 years, started by the guy they call Grampy because they're the fourth generation. So, but media has changed. They've sold some of their businesses, and so we're also involved in the BERKS Group, which you saw on the first slide, which is the family's diversification effort. So, and that now we're also we own precision manufacturing. We own online education and edge data centers. So the family trying to diversify the holdings. And so we see all of these things in all of those areas and in different ways. And the tactics that we'll take to try to alleviate these things, or in some cases maybe benefit from them, are very different as we go through. But 100% these things resonate with us and the way that we're running the business and preparing it as we look forward.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I would add as I'm looking at this slide, the first two of the 43, they kind of feed into each other. As companies are leveraging technology to automate pieces to become more efficient, you do need to start kind of retraining and reskilling some of the people to be doing those new things. And then it requires you to recruit, other types of people. And, what I would say in terms of having IT and HR at the table together, it's important that, we're both talking to each other so that we understand the kinds of technologies that are being deployed, making sure they're secure, making sure, that the SaaS services are meeting all of the expectations, and making sure that, everything is playing nicely together. So.
Terrific. So these are issues that are both, front and center, as well as kind of in the background in terms of almost everything you're doing. So let's move on and talk a little bit about the data we collected on what the anticipated workloads are projected. And again, what we have here is a comparison of what's projected for 2023 compared to what people actually have in place or had in place for 2022. And so what we're seeing here overall is quite a substantial increase anticipated in workload. And this is the overall average increase. And these are all compared to 2022. So overall, our respondents indicated they're expecting workloads to go up about 10.5%. So that growth rate is a bit higher than it was last year based on the study, which was 9.1%. So volumes of activity for HR continue to grow. And so when we look at the staffing plans, and when we look at the operating budget plans, how they're going to change, overall, they're pretty much flat. I mean, 0.3% growth in staff, as well as a 0.4% in operating budget. So overall, we're not going to get a heck of a lot more. And when we broke it down, we don't have the slide here, but I'd say roughly only a little more than a quarter of the organizations that we surveyed indicated they were going to be getting increases. Most said budgets and FTE headcounts are going to be flat, and then there was a proportion about anywhere from 25 to 30% saying they were anticipating some cutbacks. So overall, as I say, it's flat. And so what that leaves us in HR is a situation that is not foreign to us, because it's pretty much been what we've been dealing with over the last several years, and that is more and more work, expectations going up, more to get done, and we got to figure out ways to take what we already have in place for the most part and wring out more productivity and also be more efficient and effective in terms of how we're operating. And so a lot of what we've been seeing, and I'll ask in a moment, Laura and Matt, what you've been experiencing around that. So a lot of organizations have been transforming their HR operation, their operating model, their processes. Some of that involves redesign, streamlining. A lot of it involves some new technology or leveraging technology that's already in place, but in a way to make things more efficient, and so on. And that leads us to HR technology. Overall, the survey base indicated on average about a 1.8% increase in spend, which is not a huge increase, but it's still an increase. Last year it was 9.1 overall, so it was still go-go years for spending on HR technology. We're still going to be spending more, but it's sort of beginning to flatten out. So I'll stop there and again invite Laura and Matt. What are you facing? And I know, having described, you've got diverse businesses, so some are probably growing rapidly. I'm thinking edge computing, for example, may be one of them, and some may be in maintenance mode. How are you seeing, number one, workloads changing, and how are you working, and what's your strategy around how to utilize headcounts and technology and the budget you're getting to keep pace with your agenda? Any thoughts on that?
Laura, do you mind if I go first on this one? Awesome. So yes to everything you just said about it being we're in a very diverse set of companies, and they're all in different phases of growth. But the trend, though, I mean, the thing that is common is exactly what you're saying in terms of technology spend being either less than last year or flat. One of the things, and this is purely from the IT side, is one of the questions that we challenge all of our teams with is, what are the things that we're doing today, and do we need to keep doing them? Are they things that we've simply always done, and we continue to do them because we've just simply always done them, or are they actually adding value to the business? And so, one thing that I'm sure each of us, all of us that are on this call, if we really dug into our budgets, what we would find is, while the growth may only be on average 1.8%, hopefully what has happened is we've gone through with a fine-tooth comb and decided, what things we can stop doing, and then allocate those additional funds to be doing more. And so new spend may actually be a little bit higher in those cases, because you're doing different, more efficient things, which is what should be happening every year. So just a little color from the IT side on that.
It's a great point in terms of thinking not just what new can we do, but what are the things we should stop doing because they're not adding value. Great point.
Yeah, and I totally agree with what Matt said about that. We really have gone through a transformation, even in our legacy business, which is a a business that's, not, the core business is not growing. So there's a constant pressure on us to run more efficiently. And interesting, you juxtapose that and the technology that we've used to make that more efficient with the manufacturing side, where some of our plants make parts for things that are for bombs that are blowing up in the Ukraine. So that business is growing rapidly. And, people think of technology as replacing people. We're adding automation in those plants because there aren't people. And so that it increases productivity. We would take a whole lot more people and a whole lot more robots. And so we've been able to grow in different ways and look at those things in different ways. The other thing that strikes me about what you're saying here, Tony, is that I think in addition to all these things, there's pressure on all of us, HR and IT, to grow in strategy and sophistication, right? So it's not just, can you get more things done? Can you process paperwork better? But in order to use that technology, so you spend more time strategically in the business with the, managing the workforce, finding new ways to change the, simple things like we're going to change the internship program so that we have more candidates and a better impact. Things that people who are running the business may not have time to do because they're just trying to get their stuff done. And again, our business is a little different. If we have 800 people working in broadcast television, that's 10 locations that probably have somewhere between 70 and 120 people. So they're in many ways like a bunch of small businesses. So, and there's opportunity everywhere as we just grow in that sophistication and strategy.
Interesting.
Hey, Tony, there's a question that might be good for you and Matt and Laura to address. Have you found that you have been able to use AI to leverage the effectiveness and efficiency of company practices?
We actually have some data around AI usage, so I'll reserve my answer till then. But I will say, so far, the learning curve and the experience with AI, based on what we're hearing, it's still early days in terms of adoption. And it's a real mixed bag. Some people are getting value, others are struggling.
So real quick on that, I have a story, and I'll tell it when it's appropriate. But you're exactly right. I mean, it's such a niche. I have a love-hate relationship with AI as a technology person, and I'll be happy to share more when it's appropriate.
Thank you.
But Laura, did you have any comment on that?
I think we can wait until we get to the AI.
Okay.
You've got so much good data, Tony. I want to make sure people see the research as well.
Okay, great. Yeah, I like the love-hate relationship with AI. I think a lot of people have a love-hate relationship with technology, period, but that's a whole nother thing. So anyway, let's continue on. There's another aspect of workload that I want to just share, a breakdown that we look at, because when we ask, okay, overall, what's increasing, but then we also look at HR and break it down into various key pieces, as you see on the left, and try to get a sense of where workloads are going, because part of the challenge is, and what I think we were hearing in some of the comments of Laura and Matt, as well as a lot of the work that we do with clients, is how do we, what should be handled by the technology, so that, and what should be handled by our people in HR, and ideally the stuff that's better handled by the technology, you try to steer as much as that as possible, so that the people can do the higher value, the things that humans are best at, and deliver on that strategic agenda that Laura, you were talking about, which is critical for HR to be, delivering its highest impact on the business. So as you see here, this is what we show is just in the middle, what percentage of organizations answering the study said, yes, we'll be increasing the amount of work going to GBS or shared services versus decreasing. We don't show no change, but it's basically, the difference between 51 and 3. And what's interesting here is that, well, the work is being the biggest increases or percentages of companies saying they're going to increase is around the self-service and the automation, and the overall change, the percentage of work expected to be handled via those channels, up 3.9% for self-service and 3.1% for automation, which in our survey, we define automation as something where the work is executed completely without human intervention. So it may be AI or RPA or some form of automation where you don't have a human actually performing any task. And again, we're trying to get a sense of to what extent is that actually beginning to happen, and what impact is that having on the workload. Self-service is where individuals, often a manager or an employee, and of course HR themselves may be utilizing the self-service, but the extent to which they're accessing the technology to perform tasks that maybe an HR person would normally do. Again, trying to see those as areas that will help to balance HR's workload. And what's interesting here is a self-service has typically been the one that is where the most growth from year to year is, and it is again this year. But normally, global business services or shared services is usually number two. But this year now we see automation ahead of it in terms of anticipated overall growth. But I should note that, and again, we can make some judgments in terms of self-service and automation. Most of the admin, that would be admin and transactional kinds of tasks. And GBS itself and shared services often handling a lot of that contact center queries or processing things. But we see workloads are going up and percentages anticipating increases in areas like centers of excellence, which tend to be program strategy, development, monitoring, maybe consulting groups, analytics groups that are helping to monitor and identify trends, support HR business partners, which we would see in the business units often, and generalist activity, corporate HR. I guess my point is they're all seeing some of their activities levels, maybe not quite as high, but still significant growth in work there. So bottom line is HR has got a lot on the plate, and it ranges across the whole spectrum of things from the day-to-day mundane to very key decision-making and support of decision-making and planning. Any thoughts, Laura or Matt, any comments on any aspects of what we're presenting here?
So I guess the thing that, and this isn't going to be a groundbreaking idea, but what has struck me over the last year is there are a lot more people, because of the things on the very first slide, the challenges in the business and in the world, that are now running to HR and go, you need to fix this, right? And the most powerful thing that happened, and I'll use our manufacturing division as an example. These are recent acquisitions. They've been with us, somewhere between 2 years and 3 years. And so bringing practices into those businesses has been really helpful, and data has been really strong because and I think sometimes we forget, but going back and making people settle down and quantify their need, especially when they're coming to IT and HR, is super powerful, because in our manufacturing division, they're like, we need people. Well, how many people? Lots of people. Where do you need them? Everywhere, right? And we were getting back that they felt like their local HR people weren't very strong, right? Oh, they're not good at recruiting. Well, we've done the math now. We've followed this through. In one of our plants, we have roughly 120 people, and they hired 38 people last year. And the people leading the business didn't know that. So being able to say, like, well, I don't think the HR person's bad at hiring people, Maybe we're bad at collectively interviewing and picking the right ones, but using data and really making people stop and settle is so powerful, because you could run down a track with a business person who comes to you with an issue without stopping to analyze it. Again, I know you're all hip to the importance of data, but that's just, as I look at these things, I think that's the way we as leaders of those organizations have to manage all those people running to us, trying to get help, because they all need it.
Mhm. I'm just curious, Laura. That's interesting. So yeah, obviously, being more transparent and making sure that people in the business see, what's actually happening, rather than just jumping to conclusions of what they perceive as HR isn't doing or is doing. But I'm just curious, from a workload standpoint, particularly the self-service and automation. Is that an area of emphasis and if so, in what respects are you trying to leverage that more?
So Matt's going to laugh when I use this example, but so we're definitely, we've added all sorts of technology. I mean, 7 years ago when I joined in my role, we were still using paper time cards in our legacy business, to give you a sense of how much has changed. And I would tell you, one of the biggest challenges we've had to self-service is the people who are in the organization who are resistant to to self-service. Like, yeah, okay, they can do that, but then I'm going to have to look at it and make sure it's right. Right, Matt?
Yes, yeah, there's a little inside ball there that we probably shouldn't get into. But yes, 100%.
But I think it's an important thing, because we
Yes.
think about self-service solving problems or automation solving problems, and they do, but a big piece of it, at least for us, has been, okay, we're going to do this, and now everybody's got to get on board and let go of something that self-service can do.
Yeah. I'm just curious, do you find the issue that we hear often around the tech as the point of interaction for employees to HR and things related to that? On the one hand, you say with self-service, people like, I don't want to do that. They're reluctant, resistant, versus like the more digitally oriented, particularly younger people coming into the organization who are like, why this is from 20 years ago. Why can't I do this on my phone? Like, why don't you have something that's, modern? Are you running into that kind of dilemma at all? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so I'd be happy to answer this one. Absolutely. So in our ed tech space, which is the SaaS offering, it's very new. It's a much it trends a little younger in terms of the employee, and we just went through, when we went through COVID and everything, everything went remote.
Sure.
And one of the things that we did was, moved people's phones from being on a desk to, just being a part of their laptop. All of the people that worked towards that, just made total sense. Like that was just something that should have already been done. And then on our manufacturing side, we struggle with some of the people even having an email address, let alone checking that email address.
Yes.
And
yes.
so one of the things that IT and HR can really help, this is where the partnership really makes a lot of sense, is making technology to be as frictionless as possible. And Laura has heard me say that 1,000 times, and it's not a term that's unique to us. I mean, it's an industry thing, but that should really be one of the goals. If you're talking about self-service, you have to talk about a frictionless experience, and you have to meet the employees where they're at to some degree. You have to be able to provide multiple ways for them to access information, which in whatever way is most comfortable for them. And surveying the organization to understand where your employees are is important. Getting that data and then creating that feedback loop where the decision makers are making the decisions that align with how your employees want to interact with that technology.
Excellent. Well, that's.
Hey, Tony.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm
Yes.
so sorry, but I want to have a question answered if you don't mind.
Sure.
They're asking about workloads. Why are workloads going up? Or is it due to lack of automation, or the increasing complexity of executing processes? Do you guys have a sense of that in your survey data?
To a little extent, I think the nature of workloads going up has, and I apologize, I think someone's at the door and my dog is welcoming them in the background if you're hearing barking. Hopefully someone will take care of that. I think it's some of that. I think some of it has to do with the shifts that we've had over the last couple of years, going from mostly everyone on premise to being in remote and then hybrid, and all that's gone on around that, I think has been adding to it. I think the changes in expectation with some of our workforce and issues around retention and whatnot, well-being, are adding things to the pie. I think if you look at the focus on the workforce has increased over the last 3 years, and I think that's been a contributing factor to HR having to step up maybe and do more. Would be my take on that. I don't know, Laura, if you had a take on that.
I would agree with that. I think the world is increasingly complex, and the challenges that you have in leadership, which foreshadowing to a slide later, but developing your leaders and their ability to manage people. And when the people go away and you can't see them on a daily basis, understanding how to motivate. So all of those things cause more challenge, even just from coming to us because they just need help connecting. But it's a really complicated world now. I mean, not that it wasn't before, but it's even more complicated than it was. And all of those things are factors.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's move on because I'm cognizant of time, and this is kind of a meaty next area. So the HR priorities or issues for 2023, and as I mentioned earlier, Laura, you only had 43. The reason why we only list 43 is it's just would be overwhelming. We could probably list 300, but for people to go through every one of them and rank them is a little much. So we kind of try to limit it. In any case, here are the top 10. And so let me just quickly talk about these things. And then again, love to hear how Laura and Matt perceive this and how these kinds of issues are impacting, or what they're seeing and what are their top priorities. As Laura hinted, the number one issue has to do with leaders and developing executives who can lead effectively in, quote, a changing business environment, to put it mildly. I mean, it has been incredibly stressful for everyone. Leaders in particular have had very unique high pressure with all that's gone on in the business, the move to digital, everything impacting the workforce, et cetera, having to learn to manage in a different mode, maybe than they were used to, from primarily everyone together to fully remote to now mostly some kind of a hybrid, or you've got lots of environments like I'm sure you have, Laura, where, well, actually, depending on the business, some are hybrid, but some are old line manufacturing. Everyone's together every day, and it's a different kind of thing. But the skill, as we look at the workforce and the expectations have changed, the skills that people managers need in order to manage people in multiple modes, to manage a much growing diverse workforce and diverse in so many different ways. And so these are presenting a lot of challenges, and HR is in the middle of that, right? Because we're looked to give guidance, to put in place the processes and the programs to help develop those skills and managers. And we're also brought in when the management and people skills are not working and managers aren't managing effectively. We typically end up being a part of the troubleshooting and a part of the solutioning. And so, not surprising. Well, I should say it isn't surprising that's number one. Last year it was number 7. And the year before it wasn't in the top 10, believe it or not. And again, these are ranked against each other. So even like the number 10 issue, leveraging technology to improve efficiency, effectiveness, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's okay. It's less important in ranking, but it still has a tremendous importance here. What separates these 10 is not a great deal in terms of the percentages ranking. The other thing I would say here that stands out in this list, and it is very consistent with last year, and that is the issues related to talent and talent management and recruiting and retention. So 2 was 2 last year, remains at 2, and we saw it in that first slide that I presented as a risk. You know, the critical skills, critical business positions, retaining and attracting people, that is a real priority that a lot of organizations are struggling with. And then related to that, number 6, talent and critical skills shortages. We see that in many areas. Certainly, you know, manufacturing, for example, a lot of organizations we've been hearing and have heard for many years as they automate more on the factory floor, they need the skill level in their people that they're having a hard time getting. And it's a recruiting problem. It's also a development problem. And so that continues to play high, as does number 9, this still crazy labor market, which has very, you know, depending on the industries you're in. And again, you guys are in multiple industries, so you're probably seeing all kinds of different behaviors that you're dealing with in different issues. And again, depending on your workforce population and segments, talent acquisition undoubtedly is still a challenge. It's the number one issue that we keep getting inquiries from our clients on various, you know, what are companies doing? How are they trying to solve this? So those are really, I think, talent and leadership are keys. And then I would say you see act as a strategic advisor to the business, which was number 1 in 2021, and it was number 1 in 2022. It's now gone down to 3, but it's still top of mind for HR. And I think it reflects the post-COVID world where the strategic nature of people and what HR does and should be doing, if it's not, is now become something that we're all focusing on much more than in the past. And then just before I invite Laura and Matt to comment, just to point out number 8 and number 10. Again, when we look at workloads, we look at the change in demand, the nature of demand, the fact we're not getting additional resources and whatnot. How do we make sure our operating models are such that we can continuously tweak and redeploy resources as the demand and needs change is encapsulated in number 8 around agility. And then 10, looking to technology and in particular what we already have in place, are we getting the most out of it? And really leveraging it to the fullest so that we can be operating as efficiently as and effectively. So that's a lot there to talk about. Laura and Matt, what are your key issues? Does any of these mirror them? Or there's some other ones you'd put in there? Let's start with what's here. What resonates with you all?
Well, I would say that all the talent issues roll up to number 1, right? So the places where we see stronger leaders, all of those other things are better, right? And I would say we're lucky because that starts with the people who own the company. and the way that what they cultivate in our leaders, being humble, listening, respect for the individual, all those things. So I think a lot of those things really roll up to leadership, and the stronger you can make your leaders, the less you'll have those issues, right? You're going to pick better people. You're going to keep the people you've got. They're going to advocate in the right places. They're going to say yes to they're going to be more strategic. They're going to say yes to the tools that get us where we need to go. And so, all of these things are important, and probably everything after that's important. But in my mind, that's where we've placed a lot of our energy, is in trying to help the folks that lead our businesses at every level become stronger. And that's across industry, right? So one quick note about number 6, because we have an interesting perspective there. One of our online education businesses is training for manufacturing.
Mm.
So we are supplying training to manufacturers who are looking for people. The community college system is broken, 2 years to become a CNC machinist. So that work is happening to try to help people get up to speed. And the thing that I'm blown away by as we started acquiring the businesses and working with them is, people are desperate for this. And it's something that, again, if you could get better at it, we had an advisory board with people from massive, we've got 100,000 employees down to companies, businesses that have 100. They all say that if they could keep their people from the first 3 to 6 months, they will work for them for a long time. And the challenge is just getting them to do that, because people will just start a job and quit.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Matt, did you have any comments on any of these, or anything else related to?
I agree completely with what Laura said. I just want to add one thing about developing executives and leaders who are leading it effectively in these new ways of running the businesses, and that would just be around from an IT perspective and a technology perspective, the people on the ground who are doing the jobs day to day, they know what their problems are. And technology is somewhat commoditized at this point. So they even can somewhat self-source their own solutions. So, one of the things that we try to, breed into our technology leaders is really the concept of just placing guardrails around your people so that they can, make their own decisions when it comes to technology, but at the same time, communicating what those are and making sure that they fit the business, fit the security needs. I mean, you'll always hear me talk about doing things in the most secure way, and making sure it's the right fit, but empowering the people underneath to be able to make technology decisions. And then really you're just a gatekeeper, well, not just a gatekeeper, but one of your roles is a gatekeeper to ensure that it's the right technology for the business.
Right.
But that's a big piece to number 1.
Excellent. Well, we've got about 10 minutes left, and we've got a couple other areas to explore. So I'm just going to move on. So we can spend a little time on each of these areas. Here, we ask people to in the study, what are the things that are getting in the way of your ability to, to execute on your agenda and to improve your capabilities, right, and your ability to succeed in your mission within HR. And so we see here number 1, and this typically is in the high end of it, normally 1 or 2, is overcommitment. There's just so much on our plates that we may have a hard time saying no to some things and end up taking on more in the way of projects than we realistically can execute on. But I think 2 is interesting, change overload. Again, not surprising. I think we're all there's been just so much change, some of it that we've instituted on our own in organizations, but a lot of it that just gets imposed on us by factors out of our control. And HR is not immune to that. And so, keeping up the engagement and the energy levels to deal with, the continuous kinds of modifications and change that we have to deal with is a top issue. And then the funding and resource allocation, right? We talked about that being, flat, and it's been flat, and it's creeped up now. It's interesting. In the past, sometimes it's been much lower on the list. So HR kind of shrugs it off as business as usual, but now it's creeped up to number 3. I think it is beginning to weigh again, given so much of the workload and the importance of what we're doing. We're hearing, gee, we could use some more help, but we're not getting it. Laura, I will point out one other thing before I bring in Laura and Matt on their perspectives. Number 9 should be a particular interest, Matt. We asked, your coordination capacity constraints of dealing with IT, and that's way down the list. So I think a lot of people have, are not seeing as working with IT to deliver on their own agendas as being a significant hurdle. There are many other issues that are pressing. So, Laura, any thoughts on what are the obstacles in your patch in terms of hurdles that you face in delivering on the HR agenda?
I think all of the above, right? And it really less even about just the HR agenda and more about the business focus. The word is focus, right? So all of these things, and you struggle because if you don't work for people who read some sort of focus, it leads to all of these things. And to your point, the change overload, some of these things are things, and certainly after the last 3 years, stuff that we couldn't possibly manage or even see coming, right? So
exactly.
I think that's the all of these things resonate and are certainly a part of it. And it depends on which of our businesses on what day that they are the particular challenge. And I would say, because we've only got a couple minutes left, one of the things that is a great fortune for us is Matt, who I think as you listen to him talk today about his perspective from an IT perspective, he's an extraordinary IT leader who sees things strategically and doesn't want to just create technology for technology's sake, but is really paying attention to the business and to people and how those things work together. I would hope that number 9 may be moving down the list because maybe there's more of the kind of collaboration that Matt and I have. But it is an extraordinary benefit to us and to everyone in our company. So
excellent point.
Well,
Okay.
it is National Humble Day. So
okay,
just,
so he's
just so you know.
okay.
Tony, can I ask a question of Matt and Laura? Because
Yes, go right ahead.
you don't see in all companies this kind of coordination between IT and HR. How would you guys recommend that other companies create that?
Get in a room and talk to each other. I mean, it really is that. I came into this position that I'm in right now, wanting to learn as much as I could about being an executive, and Laura was really good to allow me to latch onto her and learn from. And so,
and in spite of that, he's doing well.
Yes, yeah. So I mean, just understanding that you both have something to bring to the table, and it's the whole executive team. I mean, it's not just IT and HR, but when you put HR and IT together, it's kind of a powerhouse to the rest of the executive team, because everyone else is busy working on sales, moving the business forward, and Laura and I are we don't sit back, but we're taking a little bit of a wider view of how do we make each of these businesses as successful. We're not focused on the widgets, we're focused on the business that makes the widgets. And so knowing that we're doing it together is key.
I also think that give credit to the people who we work for, that we are not put in a position where we are fighting each other for resources. Because I have worked in those companies with various divisions who are at war all the time because there's a finite amount, and the people above them want them to fight, right? And so that's not the scenario in our company, and that's super helpful. So
Terrific.
Cool.
So let's move on, just I guess on our final slide that we'll be talking. We've only got a few minutes left, and it really looks at, the state of adoption of various categories of technology within HR, the growth projection, and what the experience has been. And so I'm not going to go into all the details here, just to say, one, HR has a lot of tech in place. They're very mature. We collect this data across some other business services functions, the same exact questions: procurement, finance, IT, and so on. And HR, in many instances, is ahead in their implementation of these kinds of technologies. So, what's interesting to me, though, is the mix of experience. In cases like cloud, most are meeting expectations. But in some of the newer technologies, the chatbots, for example, RPA as well, it's been a mixed picture in terms of, significant portions that are not able to get realize the benefits that they had hoped. I guess I'll close on this and ask Laura and Matt, any thoughts on, secrets on what to think about with IT and HR in terms of how you collaborate to ensure the successful implementation and successful use of the technologies in place? Whether it's the new stuff or the core stuff.
So if you don't mind, Laura, I'll take this. I'll use this to briefly tell my AI story and my love-hate,
right.
my love-hate, because I mean, clearly the bottom two, fell short of expectations, and that's kind of playing around in that area. I would say anyone who's trying to implement AI, it's not a panacea of, solving every problem, and you need to choose your battles. You need to understand what AI problems can actually solve. You need to really understand that before you go into that. One area where we really kind of nailed AI is actually in our broadcast location. So real quick, we have what's called the Broadcast Operations Center, and that's where all of the television signals for all 70 television stations that we have all come into. And if you walk into the room, you just basically see this wall of small little tiny TV signals. And there's 3 people in that room basically monitoring the operations. There's 70 signals. Clearly not everyone is watching every single one. And so, AI has played a part there where we've trained the computers to know what a good television signal looks like and what a bad television signal looks like. Really simple to do because there's very explicit rules that you can put in place. So a great use of it. Terrible place to use it. I'll use it's brand new. I'm sure you all have heard of the ChatGPT system.
Oh, gee.
Laura, I'll be careful on this one. But some people like to think that it's going to replace all of the reporters because it can write stories. But what people aren't understanding about that particular technology is that it doesn't create content. It simply curates and repackages existing content. Well, we're in the news gathering business of what has happened new, not what happened yesterday. And so it's one of those things where as a technology leader, we have to be, at the table to explain to the businesses when to apply AI or when to apply technology and where it doesn't, even though it might sound cool. So again, things that we, could be doing, but should we be doing? So I will end with that. Thank you.
Hey, Matt, I see Rick ask a question about, does AI have utility in blocking cyber threats?
It absolutely does. Do we really want to spend, Rick, I'd be happy to get on a call with you afterwards, but it absolutely, behavior-based detection for, cyber threats is where everything should be going. It cannot happen. It cannot scale without machine learning and AI. And so I'd be happy to go into a more technical, dissertation on that at some point.
So Tony, I think we've got time now, and we don't have time. We're out of time. I think there's a AI discussion in our future, Matt. So maybe we'll have you back and we'll talk about AI and all this.
I would be happy to.
Yeah, it'd be great because I'm seeing questions around that. There are a couple questions that we didn't answer, which I'll get back to you, one with Laura. But just a big thank you to Tony for presenting all of the great data. And just a reminder, you guys will get the deck, you will get the recording. And a huge thank you to Laura and Matt. You guys just brought it to, I mean, made it human. You made everything that Tony's talking about, bring it into the company, and you were amazing. So thank you so much. Appreciate everybody being here. We'll hopefully see you in March with our next thought leadership session around HR analytics. And maybe we'll bring in AI too, Matt. Thanks,
Sure.
everybody.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, Laura. Bye, Matt. Thank you.
Bye, Tony.